Nation, got another one for you. Let's get it.
You've got mail.
Welcome to the House at Hammer, built by the nation for the nation. Welcome to Raider Nation News today. I am joined. It's kind of funny. We talk on the phone a whole bunch of times. You know, like when you're meeting that person face to face, it's kind of happening on camera. Ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, our host for tonight for this special edition of Vault Talk, Ty Butler of ESPN Radio New York. Let's give him a nice round of applause. Thanks for joining us tonight, brother.
Yo, I gotta be honest, man. Once Zach Wilson threw that pick on Sunday night and you text me, I thought about canceling the spot. I was not in the right mindset, emotionally. I was going through it. Psychologically, I said, give me a break. But because on Sunday when we spoke, or Saturday, whatever day it was, I think it was Saturday afternoon, we actually spoke.
Yep.
I committed to it. I'm a man of my word. So I'm here, baby. I'm here in the flesh. I'm in the building. Raider Nation, what's up, y'all?
Hey, man, come on. It was all good sportsmanship. I did wish you best of luck going into the game, and all I said was a good game, man. It was.
And how do I take a good game, bro? No, when the quarterback of your team gets to the 15-yard line with a chance to essentially save your season, and he throws an interception, that's not a good game. I didn't know if it was sarcasm. I don't know what the situation was. But don't text me good game. That was not a good game. That was embarrassing. It was pathetic. I was nauseous the whole time. And then I was angry going to sleep. And I had nightmares about it. Woke up the next day praying that it was a nightmare. But unfortunately, it did come to fruition. The Raiders did beat the Jets. So I'm prepared to come on here and break the game down. But I'm telling you, man, I'm not in a good mood. But let's do it.
You know what's crazy? A couple of months ago, we had this conversation going into the season. Not too long after you guys had gotten Aaron Rodgers, and I said what I said during that conversation, and said, you should pull up to Vegas. You're like, nah, I'm good where I'm at, and we gonna beat y'all. We're gonna be 14-3, whatever, what have you. And game one of the season, they made a little poster of it. Compliments of Gridiron Heights, gone in 93 seconds.
Yeah, I actually told you this would be the first of two trips to Vegas. I was predicting that the Jets were going to go out there, beat your Raiders. That's an easy W. And then they'll obviously go in the Super Bowl and play whoever comes out, Cowboys, Eagles, Niners. But, the Rodgers news was devastating. It was crushing. And it's funny, or not so funny. I'm watching it with, a couple of family members, some friends, and one of my boys was a diehard Jet fan. This was actually the first time that we had ever watched a Jet game together. And
Right.
he looked at me and he's like, I've never seen you like this before. Like, you look just absolutely demolished. Like, you look defeated, devastated, tense. I've never seen you like this before. And it was because, after all those years of misery, Jet fans, though, 12 straight years not making the playoffs, haven't been to a Super Bowl since 69. It's the first time you legitimately came into a season thinking you can go toe-to-toe with everyone and anyone, regardless of who the opponent is, regardless of where the game is being played. And to have it just in an instant, just gone just like that, felt so cruel, man. It was devastating. But they're 4-5 now. The Raiders, that's a big win for your team.
Yeah.
Look, Antonio Pierce has them boys playing well. And now you can actually, look at the rest of the season and say, we've got a chance. Like, I don't love your opportunity to do so because it's still like you're in that division with the Chargers, with the Broncos, who have certainly become red hot. and obviously the Chiefs. But you're alive. You're a live dog now at 5-5. We're looking at the graphic last night where it says in the hunt,
Yeah.
and the Raiders were right there.
It's crazy because like I've brought this up especially since Pierce was made interim head coach. Like we're kind of repeating 2021 in a sense. Like 2021, we had the unfortunate circumstance with Henry Ruggs. We had Gruden being fired, John Madden passing away. We go into this
Yep.
season and dealing with Josh McDaniels, he got fired. You had the mental health issues with Chandler Jones. It's like
Yeah.
we're kind of seeing.
That was a weird situation.
It's still weird because this dude is all over IG, still making
Hmm.
these videos, and it's like you have people that are fans of him still that he doesn't even talk during these lives. He's just doing a whole bunch of random and very weird things, and it's just like, dude, like I'm praying for you. I tell people all the time, mental health is no joke, but like, bro, like stay off of social media for a bit. Like, get your head right, please. Like, but like again, talking about that and looking back at 2021 and what we're dealing with now, I feel like who's to say that we don't have that run again? Like the rest of our schedule is a lot of conference teams and a lot of in division matchups, and the conference record ultimately is going to be what is the most important for us if we had that chance at potentially getting a wild card.
Yeah, and so here's the conflict with Raiders fans. And look, this is not me being salty or anything. Like we'll talk about the game, we'll get to the Jets part of it. But just as an objective view, as someone who loves football and talks about it for a living on ESPN New York, you have to now find the difference between, maybe we've turned a corner because of the new coach syndrome, and because like clearly the Raiders were more talented than they were playing. Like the fact that you had Devontae Adams, who's one of, if not the best receiver in football. You had Josh Jacobs, who was one of, and he's not the best running back in football, but certainly one of the best running backs in football. The fact that you have those two on your offense, and up until the Giants game a couple weeks ago, you would score 20 points in a game once all season, was maddening. So you got rid of the problem. Josh McDaniels clearly was in over his head for the second straight time as a head coach. And obviously, there was some dissension between him and the players in that locker room. We saw it play out in real time where they're celebrating and then they go out there and win two straight. So now you have to find, is it that we've turned a corner, or were we fortunate enough to play literally the two worst offensive teams in football in the Giants and the Jets in back to back weeks? Because now it's good that you have that under your belt. But here is like where we get to learn about whether or not that Raiders team is for real a legitimate, playoff caliber roster that can get into the hunt. Because you've got the Dolphins, the Chiefs, the Vikings, who all of a sudden are one of the hottest teams in football,
Yep.
followed by the Chargers and the Chiefs again. So like that's 5 straight games that you're not going to be favored in. You're not going to be favored in any of those games. So you're going to have to come out and find a way to pull upsets, and maybe two or three of those to keep this vision alive. But you do have to love the type of effort, the type of energy, the type of response you've gotten from Antonio Pierce. And what I loved, listening to the broadcast was he said, Adams, you're one of our best players. Like you need the ball more. The fact that we're going games and you've got one reception is ridiculous. Fed him early, moved him around, put him in the inside, and that created some matchup issues for the Jets early. And then they fed Josh Jacobs in that second half. We're going to run the ball. They're not going to stop us. And he ended up with over 100 yards. Had the fumble, of course, but they were able to escape. So it's a really good win for the Raiders.
That still was not a fumble though. I definitely I looked at it. He was down.
He was down. So I thought that he fumbled it, but did recover it.
Right.
I thought he recovered it. But when the call on the field is that the Jets, were able to get possession, it's hard to overturn that. Like if they had ruled that Jacobs had recovered it, then they were not going to overturn it.
No.
I do think he fumbled it, but you can clearly see he was able to get it back and he had possession of it.
Right. You never know what happens in those dog piles unless you've actually been in one. And I was telling somebody the story about that the other day. Like there's a lot of crazy stuff that goes on in those piles.
Is that why they call you Hammer? Like, what's the deal with this?
So I got
What's up
it
with the
actually.
nickname?
I got it from playing semi-pro football. One of the first teams I played for on one drive, I had 3 sacks in a drive, and the head
Mm.
coach just shouted it out at the top of his lungs, and I'm like, oh, this is cool. I think this is gonna stick. And that's what everybody's been referring to me as since what, 2009?
Mm. So I mean I was nervous. I came on the show. I'm like, what am I doing? What am I doing here? I've clearly worked for a company with cachet. I don't want to cause the integrity of the brand to be impugned. So I hear Hammer. I'm like, oh, this guy got a gun issue? Is he like low key John Morant? But it's
Oh
good
God.
that it's a sports related nickname that you were able to stumble upon.
No,
So
absolutely.
good to hear that.
Trust me, this is my third year doing the YouTube thing. I actually spoke to one of my childhood friends who's the reason I got into this. He told me like, "Hey, you call into ESPN radio all the time. These guys engage with you. You know your stuff. We need to
Hmm.
put this to use."
That's good,
So
man.
the rest is history. I've been doing this now. This is year 3, and we just hit 7,000 subscribers about 2 weeks
Nice.
ago. So for those in the chat, I appreciate y'all. I love y'all. Thank you guys for your continued support. But it's
Of
because of
course.
guys like Ty, and Ty was working as a producer for ESPN Radio New York, working a lot with Anita Marks for the longest time. I used to always hear you. Used to always answer the phone when I called, and now big things. You have your own show now on the weekends, and it's like, dude, I'm incredibly happy for you. Like,
Thanks, bro.
it's definitely got to be a dream come true for you.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. I can't lie. It's a wonderful opportunity, and people like Anita Marks, got to give her some love. Shout out to her because as a producer, when I was a producer, she understood like what the goals were, and she allowed me to come on and chop it up with her. We had nice back and forth. Sometimes it got contentious, but it's all for the entertainment of for the entertainment part of it and to keep our listeners engaged. But yeah, it's fun, man, especially during football season. The Giants stink. We obviously we are all over the Jets and Giants, but I mean, what a disaster that team is. The fact that they scored 6 points against your defense is a disgrace. And then the Jets, man, last week was just an utter embarrassment. Penalties, just the mental mistakes, the interception that ended the game. Great play by great play by a linebacker there. And then he announces after the game that his wifey's having a kid. So that was
Yeah.
a cool moment.
Shout out to Robert Spillane. Like, this dude was a
Yeah.
guy that when we signed him during free agency, I was questioning it. I'm like, this isn't the sexiest free agency signing. Like, and he's just become a leader in that locker room. He's tied for most interceptions by a linebacker in the league right now. Dude's an alpha. Like, he's really done his thing. And yeah, congratulations to him and his wife. Expecting a kid, I believe he said June 2024.
Mm.
So congratulations to him and the family. That was awesome.
It's
Let's
perfect timing because then he gets to enjoy, and then right before getting back to training camp, so it's perfect timing.
get that little paternity leave before training
Yeah.
camp.
See that the smartest athletes, man. Like I never understood. I forget who it was who had a baby at literally the day of the Super Bowl a couple years ago. On the Rams. I forget his name is escaping. I'm pretty sure someone's gonna throw it in the comments. But I'm like, yo, y'all gotta be able to figure the math out. 40 weeks, do it work backwards. Like we learned this in grade school. You can because imagine that baby comes the morning of the Super Bowl. You gotta miss the game. I mean, what are we doing here?
Let's talk about your Jets.
Let's do it.
I know it's a little painful right now, but earlier today, uh, the Jets released Michael Carter.
Yeah.
Now, I've
Uh,
heard some different things about this. I heard Salah pretty much say, like, these guys do whatever it is that they do on the field. They're normally not going to be penalized. He did have that penalty for that chop block, and we never saw him the rest of the game. And then 2 days later, he is no longer a Jet. What? Why? What's going on there?
so I think this was a combination of a lot of things, and you pretty much saw the writing on the wall this past off season when the Jets drafted Izzy, and this was clearly going to be a guy who they were going to utilize at some point. And so far he has not been seen because he's sitting behind Brees Hall and Dalvin Cook, and then Michael Carter had been relegated to a third down back in his rookie season a couple years ago. 2021 looked pretty good. Last couple years, not the same. And then the Jets just decided to cut bait. But to me, this is more of an indictment of the GM. Like the Jets right now, you look at their offense that was supposed to be electrifying. Obviously, when you go from Rodgers to Zach Wilson, it's probably the biggest drop off in all of the NFL, starter to backup.
Right.
But they just don't have any explosiveness. They just don't have any game changers outside of Garrett Wilson and Brees Hall. And we see in this league, like, you need more than that, especially with the nuance of the defenses and how offenses become so prolific. Like, there's so much involved where you need, game changing talent, and the Jets just don't have that outside of a couple guys. But this is another pick he missed on. He missed on, the Elijah Moore pick. They ended up trading him to Cleveland, and they used one of those picks to get Rodgers. But with him, with Denzel Mims, the fact that they don't go out there and get JSN, who goes to Seattle, but they drafted Will McDonald that filled a position of need. It's just frustrating to watch, skill position player after skill position player leave because they had no value and you had no use for them when this is a team that desperately needs offense.
Let's talk about your quarterback right now. As it stands, Zach Wilson is a starter for the Jets. Uh, are these guys giving up hope? Are we going to see Trevor Siemian be activated and potentially
No,
be replacing Zach
not
Wilson?
going
Or
to
are they
happen.
riding out the season with him?
They're gonna ride it out with him. It's clear that the organization, for good or for bad, is invested deeply into this guy. I mean, the fact that they came into a season with Zach Wilson as their backup quarterback, who was always going to be one play away from having to be reinserted into a game, sitting behind a 39-year-old Aaron Rodgers, who, by the way, had only missed one game since 2018, and that was for COVID.
Right.
But you don't get older and more durable, right? Like Rodgers, there was always going to be a chance that he was going to miss a few games. Now, no one thought it was going to be the season, but it's something that you have to game plan for. And the idea that you would come into it with Zach Wilson as your backup plan, when last year 3 times you said he was not good enough to play because you benched him. This past off season, you said he was not good enough to play because you literally traded multiple first round picks for his replacement in the form of a 39-year-old.
Right.
It told you all you needed to know. And now you're stuck with this guy holding back a defense that you just saw on Sunday. That's pretty damn good, right? Like the defense for the last 2 years has been pretty special. And they just can't find a way to score touchdowns. It's like an analogy. Once they get into the red zone, like to start the year, they couldn't move the ball. Last couple weeks they're moving the ball. Now they can't get into the red zone. I mean, they can't get into the end zone. It's penalty. It's lack of discipline. It's the turnover that Zach Wilson had actually cleaned up as far as interceptions. He keeps fumbling, but he
Right.
wasn't throwing interceptions, and then we saw that resurface on Sunday. So it's just, I mean, every fan is frustrated because what it feels like is you're watching the same game that you did every week last year, and it's just like at some point, like, come on, like all these. I just watched Josh Dobbs last week literally show up to Minnesota. Didn't know any of his teammates' name. He wasn't starting, but Jaron Hall goes down. He has to come in. He's on the sidelines working on snap counts. Like he's working on getting the ball hiked to him. Didn't know anything.
Right.
And then hung what, 31 on the Falcons? And then this past week, he put up 27 points. And they lost Kirk Cousins, and it's Kirk Cousins is really good, but you haven't really seen the absence. Like CJ Stroud. I mean, that dude might be the MVP right now. He's balling.
Yeah.
Sam Howell. Like, no, Sam Howell's a 5th round pick. No one knew anything about Sam Howell. He links up with Eric Bieniemy, and he's like one of the leaders in the NFL in passing yards. So all around the league, you see offenses putting up points. You see random quarterbacks, putting numbers up, and then this guy who's been in the league for 3 years can't seem to figure it out. So it's just debilitating.
I've said this about the Jets like over time. Like, is it just like that they have like a bad, I want to call it QB purgatory at this point. Like, I feel like it's a rotating door for them, and the quarterbacks just don't seem to succeed. Especially like you can go as far back as Mark Sanchez, and it's just been dub after dub after dub after
But
dub.
see, at least Mark had a 2-year run where he was in back-to-back AFC Championship
Right,
games,
right,
and in year 3 after the AFC Championship game, they were in the playoff hunt up until, what was it, week 16, that Christmas Eve game against the Giants where Victor Cruz goes 99 yards for a touchdown, and then that ends their postseason hope. So they were a legitimate playoff caliber team for 3 straight seasons with Mark Sanchez. This guy, I mean, you're begging for Mark Sanchez to come back watching Zach Wilson play football. Seriously. It's like he does things that you're just like you just find yourself like going, man, I feel like I could be better playing quarterback. Like, because clearly, and you know what the frustrating part, and I call it toxic. Like, you ever get into a relationship with somebody and you're like, damn, you hella toxic. Like, you got the looks. I mean, you've got a lot of good things going for you that would make me want to be with you. But then your flaws are just so glaring. I can't do it.
Can't do it.
That's Zach Wilson. Like, he's clearly got what we call the arm talent, right? He can make every throw. He's got sneaky athleticism. The fact that he was able to elude Crosby on that Hail Mary pass was insane. But that shows you like he's got some talent, he's got some escapability. It's just it's not here for him.
Yeah.
Like, he can't figure it out consistently, which is why I call it toxic, because he'll show you flashes of who he can be, and it'll have like us thirsty Jet fans thinking, man, all right, maybe we got something. But then he stares a receiver down, and Spillane's got an interception to seal the game. And now you're wondering if the playoff hopes are dead. But then you watch the Bills lose last night, and you're thinking, I don't know, man. You guys know that Undertaker shot
Where
where
it
he just
pops
sits up?
up. Yep.
He just pops up. I see you got the wrestling belts there. So, I mean, we all know that's how we were feeling last night, about 11:37 p.m. on the East Coast. All the Jet fans are like, hold up now. Don't cut us out yet.
I do think it's going to be a good matchup as you guys are playing Buffalo for the second time this coming weekend. Like,
Yeah.
again, I can't take away what you guys have been doing on the defense. Like, the run game, your run defense isn't the best, and that was where we made the adjustments in the second half. But, like, your secondary and DJ Reed, Sauce Gardner, who's the other one? Who's the slot? Who's the nickel corner?
Oh, Michael Carter.
Right, Michael Carter. You guys got a solid linebacking core as well. Like, the
Yeah.
defense is,
CJ,
yeah, the defense is
Quincy.
impressive. The defense is impressive. It's just your offensive line has been banged up.
Hmm.
I know Mekhi Becton is kind of dealing with a knee injury right now, and it's the opposite knee from what he injured last season. And you guys don't really have a quarterback. Like,
Yeah.
I do feel for you in a sense. I'm not gonna be like, haha, you guys like. No, it's a tough situation, especially going into the season with what you guys had and what you guys thought was going to happen. I don't think it helps the cause very much that your team mascot Fireman Ed decides to shout out JETS Jets in a plane to Vegas. Like, he might have just set you guys up for that one.
Nah, listen. That was funny. I'm happy for Fireman Ed because that went viral, and it was cool to see him, in that element, getting a reaction as far as like having some Jet fans on the flight, and it was good energy to have over there in Vegas. What what it comes down to is, and you highlighted all the issues. The Jet defense is stout. It's incredible, but you can then it becomes magnified. Like Josh Jacobs doing what he did in the second half was the same thing that Saquon Barkley did a couple weeks ago against the Jets in the second half.
Hmm.
They actually lost one of their interior defensive linemen in Al Woods, who was one of the best run stoppers for this team. And we've seen that like pay dividends in a negative way. But those things become highlighted when you have an offense that can't score. Like if you hold an NFL team to 16 points in their building, you should be able to win that game. And the Raiders hung in there because the first half they did not play well at all. Jets, you could argue, could have been up 21-3, and that's because they were in the red zone 3 times, and 3 straight times there was a dumb penalty that kicked them out of the position to score a touchdown.
Right.
Then they score a touchdown, and Zach Wilson stepped out of bounds. Then they score a touchdown on the next play, and then it's like, oh, here's a CJ Uzoma with a clear holding penalty, and they were able to punch it in. So, I mean, they let the Raiders hang around, and once you allow a team with some life to do that in their building, they're going to take advantage. And your boy O'Connell with a nice dart on that touchdown pass.
That was a great catch there too by Michael Mayer, and that was
Yeah.
both their first touchdowns in the league. Like it was great to see that Michael Mayer was a guy that we had said should have been involved in the offense a very long time ago. You talk about in regards to offense scoring. Like, look, we struggled heavily throughout the season. Like the first time we went over 21 points was courtesy of Max Crosby getting that sack at the end of the game against the Patriots. Things have
Hmm.
opened up a hell of a lot more. It was clear as day that Josh McDaniels had a handcuff on everything. Defense, you were not seeing what you're seeing out of this defense now in regards to the stunts, the blitzes. A lot of things have changed up. The offense, everybody's finally getting involved, and it's showing. Like we're doing reverses, we're doing end arounds, like we're doing jet sweeps.
Yeah, DeAndre, it was a DeAndre Carter had that fourth down play on like a reverse that caught the Jets by surprise, and that was huge. Also, I thought it was very telling, and credit to NBC for highlighting this. Josh Jacobs, when he comes out and he says like this is the first time that under this leadership I've been involved in the offensive plays being called for me. Like they gave him a sheet and they gave him a bunch of different run options, and he had input on what he wanted to be installed as part of the game plan
Yep.
for that week. And he said they ran every single play. That's important. And Josh McDaniels, like, similar to every Belichick disciple, is going to try to do it that way. And I thought about Belichick because Belichick's a guy that's like, I don't care how great you are. Like my game plan is my game plan. I don't care what your star power is. Like
Right.
I don't care what your name is. Like this is the game plan, and we're going to work. We're going to do what's best for our team, and that resonated. With Josh. It sounds like the same was the case for Josh Jacobs. Like I watch a lot of Raider games, and I'm thinking, how is Devontae not involved? Like he's disengaged, and then people are like confused as to, well, how did he drop that? How did he drop that pass? How did how did he not catch that ball? Well, we're not being featured. It's hard to be in a rhythm. We know Devontae's one of the best, especially with his hands. Like you're never gonna
Absolutely.
question Devontae's hands. His route running is the best in football. But once you get him engaged and you do so early, then that opens up your offense. And I thought that that's what helped Josh Jacobs out in the second half of that game, because the Jets had to be concerned with their receiving core, obviously with Renfro, with Adams, and Jacobs, that gave him a little bit more breathing room to get it cooking.
And that was Jacob's first game rushing for over 100 yards. Like again, you can see the changes. I think it was
Yeah.
after the game against the Giants. JJ had spoken to reporters and was saying like, look, these coaches and Pierce and Bo Hard agreed this is his first time ever being an offensive coordinator. They're
Mm-hmm.
taking his input. Like you don't hear that happen. And it's like, you would think as a coach, and I coached years ago, I did semi pro in high school football, but it's like, you would think that you would want to coach to these players' strengths because that
Yeah.
would be the key to success. And this dude wants to dictate, and if it's my way or the highway, like Jacobs should have got that extension this past offseason. And if somebody else was in that position, I think they would have given him the extension. I had said maybe a 3 year, $42 million deal with about 26 in guaranteed money. He wants to finish his career a Raider. He personally said that to me at the Pro Bowl this past year. He wants to finish his career a Raider. I think if Pierce and Champ Kelly are brought back on a 2, maybe 3 year extension for their rightful positions, I think Jacobs does get that extension by them.
And I understand that the league is moving toward a philosophy when it comes to running backs that they're easily replaceable. Like, right, we saw Kansas City take a running back with a high pick. He got benched, and here comes seventh round pick Isaiah Pacheco. He helps them win a Super Bowl. That tells you we can kind of do this by committee. We can find someone late in rounds. We don't have to overpay for an aging running back. Josh Jacobs only 25 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like the Raiders, like, let's be honest, they're not competing for a Super Bowl. So what's the harm in locking up either your first or second best player on offense to, like you said, a 2 or 3 year deal where you still have some flexibility. That's going to take him to where he's 27 or 28.
Hmm.
And it's not like, to bring it to the Giants, like the Giants had their trepidation. Saquon's got a rich injury history. And then we saw it reveal itself this year. He missed 3 weeks with a high ankle sprain.
Right.
Josh Jacobs, he's young. And, I actually met Josh Jacobs before. He came to SiriusXM for an interview. But he's played, at least 15 games every year since his rookie season. So, I mean, like that didn't make a lot of sense to me. But the Raiders, like the infrastructure when it comes to like their front office, you're paying what, 3 head coaches? Well, you're paying Gruden, obviously.
Yeah, they paid
You're
off.
paying
They paid off McDaniels.
you're paying McDaniels, and now Antonio Pierce. We'll see what happens if he gets the. He's gonna get a good opportunity especially if they keep winning some games.
Hmm.
But there's just too much turnover, and the Gruden situation, I understand. Like not that was not something they could have foreseen happening. Like that
Right.
was just like a wild situation. But you need stability, man. Like in order to build a especially in that division, like you're not going to get away with being like a goofy organization. So hopefully for you guys, it can like resolve itself, and now you can see some type of functionality where you can not be one of the laughing stocks in this conference.
It's crazy because like going into these last two seasons, I've looked at the division and I've said like the Broncos constantly like a bottom of the barrel team, and the Broncos still have yet to beat the Las Vegas Raiders since we relocated a couple of years back. The Chargers are such an up and down team, but the one person that's holding them back right now is Staley. Like I do believe that Staley is going to be out come Black Monday, and you're probably going to see Kellen Moore be the successor as the next head coach for the Los Angeles Chargers.
Probably. And I will say this though, because the knee jerk always is to blame Brandon Staley, who first I was fond of because I just found it so annoying that like there's such a large contingent of anti analytics. So anytime you see a coach being super aggressive on fourth down, you're just gonna like immediately throw up in your mouth and be critical.
Yep.
And I just didn't like that because the sport is changing. The numbers are what they are. Like clearly, there are some times you shouldn't be going for it. Like on your own 30, fourth and four is ridiculous. But the sport is trending toward being more aggressive. Now it's become silly, right? Like you blow a 27 nothing lead in the playoffs. Come on. Another thing I'll say is this. I'm high on Justin Herbert.
Right.
Justin Herbert's not having a great season. I know he played well against Detroit this past weekend. He's not having a great season. That Cowboys game, he missed he missed a lot of touchdowns or a couple touchdowns to Keenan Allen. He has not been great. And of course, Mike Williams going down, that hurt them on offense. But I think you're right. They're definitely going to see a change under the guard at the head coach position. Chiefs aren't going anywhere. They're going to be winning that division as long as Mahomes is healthy. And then I don't know, man. Like Sean Payton, I made fun of him because he came in with all this, the fiery takes.
Yeah.
They've won 3 straight games, and I'm not saying Russell Wilson is ever going to be the guy that he was in Seattle. But that version of him last night looked pretty. Now they got helped by 4 turnovers being forced by their defense, but that version of him last night looked like it could win some games. And we keep saying every year that's going to be the best division in football, the West, the West, the West.
Yep.
Because they got Russell Wilson and Herbert and Mahomes, and then Jimmy G. What can I ask you something real quick now that I'm going through this?
Absolutely.
Now it's not aging well because Derek Carr looks awful with the Saints, but what was the reason that they decided to part with him in favor of an injury-prone Jimmy Garoppolo, who the best or second best mind in football offensively told you he had no use for him anymore?
Who was our recently fired head coach?
Oh, okay, so that makes sense.
I'm telling you, everything changed when this dude came, and it right away became the Patriot way. You brought a whole bunch of former Patriots. You brought a journeyman backup quarterback in Brian Hoyer, who's been in the league for
Yeah,
what, 14, 15 years, played for 8 or 9 different teams. You bring in an injury prone Garoppolo, which at first when Garoppolo came in, I looked at the numbers, I talked about his stats. I'm like, dude actually is a little bit more accurate than Carr. He has playoff experience, but we saw what happened. And again, handcuffs were definitely on offense and defense. Like if it wasn't what McDaniels wanted, it wasn't working. Even year one under his regime, you have a lead at halftime on 6 different occasions. Instead of keeping your foot on their necks, you steer
Yeah, they
away
were
from what
blowing
worked,
leads.
and that was
Oh
it. Like,
man, that was bad last year. And the Chiefs game, didn't they have a they had they had like a 14 or 20-point lead against the Chiefs last year and blew it.
and blew it. Like it's
Yeah,
just
that was a story last year.
and it, this year it was just terrible clock management, terrible play calling. You're doing things late in the games that you should not be doing. Like I am one of those guys that's anti-analytics. Like when it comes to baseball more than anything else, I feel that's killing the game. I miss small ball. That's what I grew up doing. That's what I loved. That's why I had such a passion for baseball. But like the analytics in football too, oh, chances are you can succeed on this fourth and short situation. Really? You can't go by analytics on everything because it's a different thing against a different team. Like you don't know the situation or what the outcome is ultimately going to be every single time, and that's killing the game. Whether it be in
So
baseball, football, I hate it.
So I hear you, but there's clearly a difference between football and baseball. Football is a sport now that, because of officiating, because of the viewing audience, is more geared toward offense. So you're not going to win games kicking field goals. You're not going to win games just on the strength of field position.
Right.
Like you could win in the past with, Trent Dilfer, and people always bring up Trent Dilfer. I feel bad for him, but like you could win in the past with just a great defense and a
Yep.
game manager. You look around the leagues, we talk about who the contenders are. It's like, oh, the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, the Eagles. Oh, that's Jalen Hurts. Oh, the Bengals, Joe Burrow. Like the best quarterbacks in football are going to have their teams as long as the organization is semi-functional
Right.
as contenders. So I understand that in a sport where offense has never been higher, you have to err on the side of what the numbers suggest that you should do in that situation, because it's to put you in better position to score. There are times where it gets a little crazy, where it gets a little nuts, but I understand that. And baseball, it's killing baseball, man. All the strikeouts, like the fact that with the stolen bases, I didn't think it went up this year just because they made the bases bigger, but
Yep.
you're watching a boring base. You're watching a boring product, and then wondering why the younger audience is not tuning in.
Yep. So I'm gonna ask you this question since you mentioned quarterbacks and you mentioned some of the top, like the elite of the elites right now in the league, right?
Hmm.
What do these quarterbacks all have in common, and why are these quarterbacks so successful in the league right now? What is the things that they have that these teams are most successful right now in the league, and these teams are like continuously in the playoffs year in and year out?
What do the quarterbacks have in
Mm-hmm.
common? You're saying?
Yep.
I mean, it's clearly that they're the most talented in the league. Like if you look at Mahomes, is a bit of a different story because we actually might be watching not the greatest quarterback ever, because that would be disrespectful to like Brady and Montana. Like he hasn't done it long enough.
Right.
But as far as like what he projects to be, he's just a different cat. I mean, it's the IQ, it's the athleticism, it's the quickness, it's the decision making, it's the clutch gene, it's the feeling that regardless of what the score is, if I'm trailing in a game, I am going to have an opportunity to come back because I have Burrow, because I have Hurts. I was gonna say Josh Allen, but I mean, this year, I don't know. Josh Allen's looking like he's taking a bit of a step back, and that Bills team might miss the playoffs. But the best quarterbacks in football are are the types of players under center who, even when the situation around them isn't ideal, they're able to elevate their game to a different level, regardless of who the defense is. And that's what they all have in common. Like the ability to carry your team. Mahomes won a Super Bowl on one leg last year, which is ridiculous.
Yep.
You can carry your team. You are a home run hitter. You can make all the throws. And it's not to say you're not going to turn the ball over. You're not going to have bad games. You're not going to have poor decision making in spots. But these guys, in the biggest moments and the biggest occasions, rise to the top, and they're able to elevate their teams.
See, what I was gonna say to that is with the names that you had mentioned before, it's like a lot of these guys, and it's like it's
And
been
good OCs, good OCs.
that too, but it's been the new wave for the last couple of years that a lot of these quarterbacks now, especially the ones you mentioned, are a lot of them are dual threats, and they're not afraid
Mhm.
to extend plays with their feet. Like you talked about Josh Allen. Josh Allen right now, I've felt since last year losing Dable as his OC that he is gone. He's had a terrible slide. We saw him in the playoffs and the turnovers he had then and how many times he got sacked. That Buffalo Bills team right now, defensively, is depleted terribly.
And they actually played well last night,
Yeah,
that unit.
I was
But yeah, they
surprised.
but yeah, their defense. I mean, with White, Milano, I hear you. It's a. I guess Joe Burrow can run on occasion.
Yeah,
I wouldn't consider him to be a dual threat, but you're right. Like Lamar, Mahomes, Hurts, even Dak, right? Like
yeah.
Dak is having an MVP type of season. He's got the ability to run. So yeah, you're right with the mobility. Not just having a quarterback that's stationary.
Shout out to GA Patriot in the chat on the 499 Super. All those elite quarterbacks have coaches who game plan to their strengths.
Yep.
It's a valid point as well.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the one guy who is playing for a contender that we don't seem to say is elite is Brock Purdy. It feels like more of a system guy. Kyle Shanahan, though, is that coach who is going to tailor his offense to whoever he has under center.
As long as he doesn't get
And
another quarterback killed.
yeah, yeah, and with Reed, obviously, yeah, I think they missed Bieniemy a little bit out in Kansas City. Matt Nagy's calling the plays there, but you're right, man. They put those guys in the best position to utilize their assets to help make their strength stronger and to dilute their weaknesses.
Do you think Bieniemy is going to be the successor at for the Commanders? Do
He
you think
better
it's
be.
like writing the
He,
writings on the wall?
he better be. It would be. I honestly would be nefarious if he wasn't. Like, what more does it? Like, we see this league is thirsty over who the next Sean McVay or the next Kyle Shanahan is. Right.
Right.
All you need is one good year as an offensive coordinator, and you're getting a job. I saw Matt LaFleur get the Green Bay job, and Tennessee's offense was like 17th in football the year before he got that job. Bieniemy had the Chiefs as the best offense 5 straight years. They were hosting the AFC Championship game. They
Right.
won 2 Super Bowls. Mahomes won 2 MVPs, and I know he's awesome. Part of that is the greatness of Eric Bieniemy. Now he's got Sam Howell looking like, I mean, he's cooking out there in Washington. So he better get that job. It would be a disgrace, because Ron Rivera is going to get fired at the end of the season. He better get that job.
We kind of knew, like, looking at it, and I saw, like I said, I mentioned Gridiron Heights before. I don't know if you've ever seen the cartoons that Bleacher Report does weekly for the NFL, but they just did one today for it was a parody of Five Nights at Freddy's with the head coaches that are pretty much on the hot seat or on their way out, and a couple of them. Ron Rivera was one of them.
Who
Of
are the
course,
other ones?
McDaniels was up there. The Falcons head coach was up there.
Arthur Smith.
Yeah. The Bears head coach Staley was up there, and I couldn't stop laughing every time I see those. Like, they are so spot on with those cartoons. Like I said, if you haven't seen it before, you got to check it out, though.
Yeah, I gotta check it out. Yeah, Matt Eberflus. I mean, the it's hard for him to just give injury reports. And then what's going on in Chicago is a mess. I don't know if you heard that clip last week where he's like describing the status of Justin Fields. Where he's like, "Oh, is he out? No, he's doubtful. He's still got a chance to play. Is he gonna play? No, he's not playing. So he's out. No, he's not out. He's doubtful." It was ridiculous. It was like one of the funniest things I've ever heard.
You know what? I could ask you a question about that now since we mentioned Chicago. Who's going to be out the door first? Do you think Fields is going to get traded this offseason, or do you
Yeah.
think the head coach is going to be gone?
They're both. I think both are happening, and they're probably going to end up with. Or I shouldn't even say probably, man. The race for the number one pick is going to be so interesting because you have the Patriots who stink, and Bill Belichick still hasn't committed to Mac Jones being his starter next week.
Right.
Um, but the Giants also stink, and the Patriots and Giants play each other in 2 weeks. So one of those teams have to win. The Panthers don't have a pick because they traded it. It's going to go to Chicago,
Right.
but it's funny. Their only win is against Houston, who and Houston might be one of the best teams in the AFC right now. So that's funny. But that race for the number one seed is going to be incredible. And as far as Chicago goes, you got to clean house and then get your quarterback in here. The Justin Fields thing, or like we knew off the bat it was gonna be an experiment. Not, I shouldn't say experiment because he was talented, like he had all the tools. You were going to have to instill a program in Chicago that was going to help develop him, and obviously that hasn't taken place. So
Right.
I think you can close a chapter on that, and maybe there'll be some buyers for him. But yeah, they'll have a new head coach and presumably a new quarterback if they finish high. And they got 2 picks. Because you imagine they get Mario Harrison Jr. and then a quarterback?
That would be insane.
That would be nuts.
God. All
And
right.
the NFC needs some quarterbacks, man. All the best quarterbacks are in the AFC right now.
That's true.
Outside of Dak and Hurts, of course, but like then everyone else is in the AFC.
All right. Final question, and this is for the New York Football Giants. Are they going to be drafting a quarterback in the 2024 NFL draft?
Without a doubt. Assuming that they don't win any other games, which I can't imagine they will with Tommy DeVito. What did he pass for 82 yards in a full NFL game, which is absolutely insane. Yeah, they'll be taking a quarterback. There's no quarterback controversy. Unfortunately for Daniel Jones, um, it never materialized, and part of it is circumstance. Like he's had all these different head coaches, all these different offensive minds. I would have loved to see how he could have looked. Let's say he had this regime from year one, and we've seen Brian Dable, as you mentioned, be able to develop a quarterback, and then Joe Shane be able to put together a good offensive line, give him some weapons, have Saquon there, good defense, and see what his potential is. Now, I don't ever think he was going to be a great quarterback,
Right.
but certainly he could have been better. The fortunate part is he got his money before he got hurt, so that's good for him. Like I'm happy that he was able to corral that bag.
I can't
But
believe they
it's
pulled
just
that off.
it was just it's been a nightmarish season for the Giants. I mean, literally everything that could go wrong has gone wrong, and the only way you don't make this season that could end up being the worst in franchise history, because the Giants, since the NFL has gone to the 16 and 17 game, the 16 then 17 game schedule, the Giants have never had a 1-win season. So that is certain, or I don't think they've ever had a 2-win season. So that's certainly in jeopardy right now. And that's the thing that you're hoping for. Because if all of a sudden they start winning games, there is a payout at the end of being this bad, and that's to get your hands on a good quarterback, a
Right.
great quarterback.
Right.
You start winning games that don't matter, that's just going to be terrifying for them.
Ty, this was definitely an honor and a privilege to have you on. Like I said, I'm able to call in while you're on ESPN Radio New York all the time, and we're able to chop it up. But to have you as a guest on my show, like, dude, thank you so much. Like, I really, really appreciate it.
Of course, man.
Before we end, let everybody know where they can find you.
Hit me up on Twitter, y'all. I'm at Ty D Butler. Instagram, Ty D Butler, TYDBUTLER. Appreciate y'all. Y'all see I'm wearing a Laker hat.
Yeah, you got
I'm
a
also
lot
a
of people.
Laker
You got a
fan.
lot of people from the West Coast in here, and I know a lot of them are Laker fans.
Yeah, man.
I am a Warrior fan.
Sorry to hear that. No Steph Curry tonight. He's got the knee injury that he's dealing with. I do love Draymond Green going at Anthony Edwards the other night, even though Anthony Edwards was giving them the business, and Steph Curry is on his way to scoring 40, and then nobody else could help him. So that's cute, Draymond. Continue to be yourself. But yeah, man, shout out Laker Nation. Just hopefully your Warriors don't see the Lakers in the playoffs, because you know that history tells us they can't beat them in the playoffs.
Come on, Team Lightskin's going to hold it down this year.
Yeah, we'll see if that happens.
Ladies and gentlemen, Raider Nation, I appreciate y'all. On your way out, if you haven't already, break them thumbs, hammer that sub, smash the bell to stay up to date with all your Raiders news, rumors, updates, live streams, and reactions. In the House of Hammer built by the nation for the nation, Raider Nation News Today. Continue to stay safe. Most importantly, be kind to one another. COVID is on the rise. Remember to wash your hands and your asses. And as always, win, lose, or tie, Raider Nation till I die. And of course, on that New York, peace, love, and positivity. We out.
Yeah.